Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Thursday morning, and this is Thursday Morning Live. Glad that you're here. And if you're listening in for the first time, glad that you're here this morning. You can find us live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, please smash that subscribe button so that you see us every week, see us on Saturday, and get fresh content every day. I am excited about our guest this morning. I've been trying to get him on the show for a while and looking forward to this interview and conversation this morning. You want to hear from a real entrepreneur, somebody who's really making some things happen on the streets. Tony P this morning will tell us a lot about that. Before we get started, though, hey, intentions. What are you intentional about today? How'd you start your day? What are you looking to do? How are you looking to grow? How are you moving yourself forward? Daily disciplines, right? Did you go to the gym? Did you pray? Did you meditate? What did you do? Did you do a cold plunge this morning? What's your intentions for the day? How many more calls? One of my favorite podcasts out there right now is Ed Mylett, and Ed talks about One More Thing, right? His book. And he talks about just doing one more thing. So if you're making 10 sales calls, why not make one more at the end of the day? Or if you're in the gym doing some reps, why not make one more rep before you finish up? But it's about how do we grow and progress a little bit more and get a little bit more. I just put a post out this morning that said, we tend to underestimate what we can do in a week. Tend to overestimate what we can get done in a week, but tend to underestimate what we can get done in a year. So every day, if we're just continuing to grow a little bit more, it's going to help us. Well, let me bring our guest in this morning. Tony P. Tony P's with Diamond Residential Mortgage. He's a business development, but more famous for the events that he puts on in Chicago. He does 4 events a month. Tony P events. If you haven't been to one, you're going to want to be after this morning. That's for sure. Hey, Tony, what's happening?
Hey, good morning, Mike. How are you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you bet. I'm glad you're here. I know we've been trying to do this for a while, so I'm glad we finally could zone in on it. So
yeah, we're both very busy dudes, and I apologize for my my trashed home office here. So it's been running around a lot. I got to clean this place up over the weekend.
Yeah, don't worry about it. That's for sure. You could come back after you clean it up again then.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, listen, I always start with that one question, right? And it's, in one word, what best describes you personally and professionally?
Yeah, Mike, that's easy. The word is connector. So I'm the youngest of 5 kids. I've always been very extroverted and outgoing and social. And throughout my life, I always just like to make a lot of friends. And when I got out of college and got into the business world, I just learned that I've always been in sales, so I just learned that the way to find more business, meet more people, generate more revenue and excitement for whatever it is I'm doing is just make a lot of friends. And how I learned how to make friends is by figuring out what the other people need and want, and how can I help them get that. So I've always had a giver's gain mentality where when I meet someone, I want to find out, what are they trying to accomplish? What are their goals, dreams, and desires? And do I have a way to help them? Or do I have someone in my network that I can put them in front of that can help them get there? So by focusing on helping other people first, then anything that I need just kind of organically falls in my lap over time, so I don't have to force anything. I just really just focus on helping others, and then anything I need will happen when it happens.
Yeah, kind of a really interesting universal law, isn't it?
Yeah.
How that works. How do you, I'll never forget, Chad Coe, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Chad was the first one years ago that really made it clear about how important connecting was. I met him, got introduced to him by somebody, and I don't even remember what I was looking for at the time, but he goes to his computer, prints out 3 names and numbers of people. And as I'm leaving his office, he's calling them saying, hey, this guy's going to call you. take his call when he calls you. And it was one of those encounters with someone who does that just made an impact in my life. How do you think that that whole connector thing came about for you? Where'd you learn that?
I think it started, when I was in college. I went to University of Illinois, and I was in a fraternity, and I was on the social chair committee, and then I was the rush chair for 2 years. So social chair, that's like you're involved with putting on, gatherings and parties and whatnot. And then rush chair is basically like sales and recruiting, to get people to join your fraternity. So those kind of roles just were natural for me. It didn't feel like work, I just genuinely enjoy meeting new people, making new friends. And by doing that, I just learned how to interact with a whole wide variety of people and just ask a lot of questions and really learn about someone else first. And then also what ties into this, shameless plug, but Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. I mean, probably read that book like 70 times, in my life. And, that book's been around for many decades, and all the lessons and everything that's in that book are still relevant today. I mean, this is like well before, the internet and computers and all this tech that we have. And if you really dig deep into the core principles of what's in that book that Dale Carnegie is teaching, I mean, it's all relevant today.
Yep.
So, and it's all about taking a genuine interest in other people, helping others get what they want, just stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of those books I have on Audible that I just go back and listen to every once in a while. It is a great book, that's for sure. Yeah. Hey, Tony, so talk about your background a little bit, what you're doing and how you got to what you're doing, and tell everybody what your last name is.
Okay, yeah. So my last name is Paolella, and it's Paolella. It's kind of a crazy Italian name that nobody knows how to spell, nobody knows how to pronounce. Throughout my life, I've had a lot of nicknames, and one of them that I kind of picked up since I've been in the working world has been Tony P, because sometimes I worked at companies where other people named Tony. So we kind of had to be like, hey, there's Tony M, there's Tony L, there's Tony P, and Tony P just kind of stuck. And it's kind of funny because it's become a brand as well, like for the events that we do. But just to go back, I mean, I spent a good 20 years of my career in the tech world, working for large software companies, internet security companies, and quite a few Silicon Valley startups, and learned a ton, made some good money, met incredible people, got to travel quite a bit. I mean, it was actually a pretty good run there. But when I got into my early 40s, like my mind, body, and soul started shutting down, because that the high tech industry in sales, it's very dog eat dog, very cutthroat. And I was able to hang in there for a good 20 years. And then, I don't know, just something inside me just said, you know what, you're meant for something else. And the stress and anxiety and stuff was just kind of weighing on me too much. And so I made a bit of a pivot. And me and one of my best friends, Greg DeKalb, we started a company called Appointments IQ several years ago, which is a lead generation business development company. So we help people in small and medium-sized companies get in front of decision makers. We do that through email campaigns, networking events, cold calling campaigns, all these different ways to help people get in front of decision makers. And by doing these, types of projects for companies, we learned that the more we went out to networking events, the more business we found, and the more partners kind of just fell in our lap. So I've always gone to a lot of events. And then what I did was I started promoting other people's events, because, when you go out, 3, 4, 5 times a week, for like breakfast meetings, lunch meetings, happy hours, you pay for the ticket, you're paying for food, you're paying for drinks. It adds up after a while. So I learned that if I just went straight to the people that put the events on and said, hey, I'll help promote your events, all I ask in return is just, comp me a ticket or two for me and a guest, and maybe a couple of drinks, and I'll help promote your events. So I did that, and I helped take a lot of these other event companies. I've double, triple, quadruple their attendees because I would just go on social media. I'd send out newsletters. I'd use the Appointments IQ software solutions that me and Greg had. And we'd get a lot of people to attend. But what happened was people kept thinking that me and Greg were putting the events on. So they said, "Hey, when's your next event?" I'm like, "Oh, this isn't ours. We're just promoting this other person's event." They're like, "Well, why don't you guys do them?" Like, I don't know, we're sales guys. We're not event guys. That's not what we do. They're like, "Yeah, but so many people know you by name." It's like, I bet if you started doing events, people would show up. So in August of 2017, we launched our first ever Tony P networking event at a bar called Rocket, which no longer exists, but was a great place. And we were expecting like 100, 120 people to show up, and 275 people showed up. So we're like, oh, wow, I think we got something here, And yeah, so our lead gen business development company, just as a fun little add-on was these networking events, which over time morphed into like its own animal. It just became a much bigger beast in a short period of time. And we kind of added that to our repertoire of things that we did.
So are your Tony P events now, are they your events? They're your networking events, or are you still promoting for somebody else? Like if I was doing an event, would you promote that event for me, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. So we actually got a separate division called Tony P's Productions, where if someone has an event that they want to produce or market or promote, we actually help do that too. So we still promote other people's events, but also because over the last several years, we've gotten relationships with so many different, bars, clubs, and restaurants in Chicago, and also with so many different, beverage companies, beer, wine, spirits, liquor brands. When other people are doing events and need help with a venue or need help with sponsors, we have a massive Rolodex at our fingertips. So to answer your question, yes, we do our own events, but then we also help host and promote and market and produce other people's events too.
Yeah. Any particular type of event or industry that you like more than another, or what do what's your space?
Oh, no, another great question. So to kind of break that down in two different ways. So on the first Thursday of the month, that's when we host our regular networking event, where we'll have anywhere from like 150 to 300 people from a wide variety of industries. And then on the second Tuesday of the month, we do a virtual event, which we do on Zoom, and we'll get probably anywhere from like 30 to 60, 70 people from wide variety industries, but they'll be from all over the country. So it won't be just Chicago. There'll be people from like LA and New York and Miami and Dallas and Denver and Phoenix and Seattle. We get people from, people outside of Chicago, because during the pandemic, there was a year and a half where we couldn't do in-person events. So we did 3 to 4 virtual events weekly, and we built a massive network outside of Chicago in a year and a half. So sometime in the near future, we're going to add, in-person events in other major markets as well. We're still working on the numbers to make that make sense, and then the third Wednesday of the month, we do a cannabis industry event, because living in the state of Illinois, we've had medical cannabis legal for a few years, or several years. And then in 2020, recreational adult use cannabis became legal. So the cannabis industry has been, booming, in Illinois, Michigan, and quite a few other states, because it's not federally legal yet. They'll be a few years away. So we actually hosted a big, cannabis industry event last night. And then the last Wednesday or Thursday of the month, we do kind of a rolling cycle of different events. Like last month, we did an event for the fashion industry. Next week, we're doing a big event for the real estate industry in Chicago, for people in commercial and residential real estate. We've done blockchain industry events. We've done events for people who are with early stage startup companies. I mean, we got, a pretty wide net that we cast, but like I said, some events are more general, where like it's for any industry, and some events are very industry specific. So we change it up every few weeks to keep it fresh.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'll tell you what, this Thursday morning show, I really try to focus in on Chicago-based people,
Yep.
Chicago-based entrepreneurs, restaurant
Yep.
owners, business owners. So anybody that you think might get some mileage out of being on here on a Thursday morning talking about their business or their restaurant, let me know. I'd love to have them on, Tony.
Yeah, Mike, I I can keep you busy for the next year with the connections I have at as far as like business owners and people who run bars, clubs, and restaurants in Chicago. Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk offline. I got a pretty massive list of people I can put you in
Yeah.
touch with and keep you very busy for a long time.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have been to some of your events and I have had some of the best times and met some really great individuals at those events where they've become good business connections. And I got introduced to you by a mutual friend of ours, Carl Moose,
Yep.
and then you showed up on Allison's coffee talk on
Yep.
Friday morning, and so that's how we kind of got connected. But you definitely have some great events, a lot of fun, a lot of networking, a lot of shenanigans go on too. But the networking piece is really good. So, what are you working on this week? What's coming up?
Yeah, I got a few things to bounce off you, but one thing I'll mention from your last comment there is that I think what really makes our events unique, because trust me, there's a lot of networking events out there. I mean, living in a big city like Chicago, there's so many options for everybody. So what we do to try to make ourselves stand out is a couple things. First off, we want to make sure people are having fun, So that's why we do them at bars, clubs, and restaurants. Not saying that you have to drink to have fun, but it does help loosen people up a little bit. Plus, it's after business hours, so people are away from their computers, their phones are in their pocket or their bag. And you can actually make a direct human interaction, which I think was kind of lacking there for a while during the pandemic. So we're trying to make sure we bring that back. The other thing too is that what me and Greg and our team of brand ambassadors do is we work very hard before, during, and after the events to make sure that there's a lot of meaningful connections taking place. So it's not just, hey, come here and party, have a good time, have a few drinks, and whoop it up. It's like, no, we're trying to get business done. So whenever people are at the events, I say, hey, who are you trying to meet? What's your goals for this year? Who's your ideal audience? And when people give me a few different bullet points what they're looking for, then I think, okay, who do I know in this room that fits those demographics? I just introduce them right then and there. And if that person's not at the event, then I say, hey, you know what? I got a few people you need to meet. They're not here tonight, but we're going to talk next couple of days and I'm going to get you connected to them,
Yeah.
So it's all about making those intentional, meaningful connections. And yeah, when it's, after business hours and it's in a fun social environment, it just makes it a lot easier because people, they're not really in work mode. They're in, hey, let's be fun and social, make friends mode. Because when you make friends first, if the business happens, that's a bonus.
Yeah.
But sometimes we have events where you make a lot of friends, you meet a lot of great people. Maybe they don't make a perfect business connection at that event at that time, but it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So if you go to quite a few different events and you kind of see the same people a few times, then you establish that rapport, then that trust factor and that confidence, then sometimes it's a little easier to kind of broach ways to do business together,
Yeah.
Sure. So kind of a long-winded answer, but yeah. And then as far as stuff we got going on, yeah, we got a huge real estate industry event going on February 23rd. It's going to be at a club called Lore, Lore, which is on the second floor of Fame, which is at 157 West Ontario. And the easiest way to think about where that is, it's like, if you know where the big McDonald's is, the Hard Rock Cafe and Tao, all those clubs are, in River North, or like the Godfrey Hotel, it's right down the street. It's like Ontario and LaSalle. It's pretty easy to find. We have probably about 250 to 300 real estate industry professionals there. And, I got my information scrolling on the bottom of the screen. So anybody wants, you can just text me directly at 312-972-7272, Or if you go to TonyP'sNetworkingEvents.com, go to the event section. It lists off our next several upcoming events. Also, access to all of our social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, which, just go to Tony P's Networking Events on those platforms and you'll find us pretty easily.
Yeah, you're definitely everywhere. That's for sure, on social media and email, and which is good. I mean, it's that repetitiveness, and people know they can count on an event coming up, because there's a lot of people that all we do is build business by networking and meeting people, right?
Yep.
And so you have to get out. I think the pandemic put a lot of pressure on the whole networking thing. I used to go to this event in the city years ago that it was a great event. It was in an office in the Citibank building on like the mezzanine level downtown in the Loop. And you'd go to the event, network for a little bit, and then you'd stand in a room and everybody would introduce themselves. You had like 25 seconds to say who you were, what you did, what you were looking for. And that gave you the ability then to be able to connect with people afterwards. I think there's different types of events that make a lot of sense. Hey, do you do all your events in the city, or do you do anything in the suburbs?
Oh, wow. That's a phenomenal question that I get asked all the time. So I'll answer that question in two parts. So for the last several years, pretty much our events have been heavily focused on being in the city, like, River North, Loop, West Loop, Gold Coast, Streeterville, Old Town, Lincoln Park, because, that's where most people work, so we do our events on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. It'd be easy for someone to go to work and then just come straight to our event afterwards, but then if someone lives in the suburbs, these are areas that are easy to get to by like L train, Uber, cab, Metro train. But when the pandemic hit, obviously we had to pivot to doing Zoom events for a year and a half, which we kind of use the same model you mentioned before, where one of the things we do is everyone would say, who they are, what they do for a living, who they want to meet, and what city they're in, and that way people could connect with each other through our Zoom events. But then, as far as doing events in the suburbs, so I've actually done a couple events up in Northbrook, because I have a company called Svet Media that I partner with a lot. They're based up at Northbrook, and they got a pretty massive presence up there. So we've done a couple events with them up there to kind of expand our reach. And then I actually live in Evanston now. Me and my wife lived in the city for many years by Wrigley Field. We moved to downtown Evanston last year. And so now being here, I'm like kind of halfway between the city and the North Shore. So it's kind of like a good way to do places and do events of both. Yeah. And then my business partner, Greg, lives out, in the Aurora, Naperville area. So we actually are going to be doing an event in Naperville in late May. So yeah, we're going to slowly start, sprinkling in some suburban events as well and kind of see how that goes. Because, our core audience has been in the city for many years. So we've been a little skittish about going outside the city because we didn't know if people would show up or not, Yeah. And plus the other thing too, is when we do stuff in the city, once again, not saying I advocate, drinking, but when you do an event in the city, if people want to have a couple of drinks, generally they can take a train or a cab or whatever to get home. They don't have to drive, whereas if we do something in the suburbs, pretty much everyone has to drive to get there, so then sure. I don't want people to be drinking and driving, so a lot of different nuances we got to work through,
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's good that you think about that stuff, and I think that's part of being in business and being having that entrepreneurial spirit as you think through a lot of those things. So that's good. Hey, listen, appreciate you being here this morning.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you on the spot with a couple of questions. Being
sure.
a Chicago-based guy, right?
Yeah.
Best tourist attraction in the area?
Wow. Best tourist attraction. I mean, I'm biased because, I grew up in Arlington Heights, but I've been living in the city for about over 25 years. I would say, there's so many to list, but I think the one that probably stands out the most that people really get a kick out of is when it's when the weather's nice out. Obviously, Chicago in the summertime is like the greatest city. There's so much to do. But I'd say in the summertime, my go-to is to get people on the architectural boat tours, where you get on those boats where you could be on the river and they have someone telling you all about the buildings, and then you go out to the lake. So I mean, I can think of like 20 different things that are awesome to do in the city, but that's probably one that is probably my favorite go-to, especially when I have people from out of town that either have never been to Chicago before, or maybe it's been a long time. And then also too, it's kind of cheesy, but going to the top of the Sears Tower, top of the Hancock Building on a clear day is pretty cool because you get, people can get a really good view. But yeah, I mean, I definitely love showing off our city to friends and colleagues from other places to kind of experience what we're about. And then obviously the food. I mean, there's so many great restaurants. I mean, too many to list here, but there's a lot of authentic Chicago restaurants I like to take people to as well.
So that's my next question. What's your favorite restaurant?
Oh my goodness. Wow, you really put me on a spot. I almost, what? It's like, I don't know if I can even answer that because there's just too many choices. I guess it depends on what I'm in the mood for. I mean, obviously if I want to get a steak, Gibson's is a great place for a steak, and also like Chicago Cut. If I want Italian food, go old school, I'll go to like Gina and Giorgetti. But then if I want to go something a little more modern, like Siena Tavern's got a great Italian food. Yeah, I mean, well, that's a loaded question. There's just too many choices, man. It's just hard. It's hard to answer that.
Yeah, you almost have one for Italian, one for Mexican.
Yeah,
so
you kind of got to break it down by genre or cuisine, because that's the thing. I mean, that's the thing. We're kind of spoiled, It's like we got too many choices.
Yeah. Well, listen, hey, I really appreciate that we finally got to connect and hook up. Tell people how they get a hold of you again, Tony. Where can they find you? Social media and everything.
Yeah. So if everyone wants to shoot me a text to set up a call, 312-972-7272, and mention that you heard me on Mike's podcast. And then if you just literally go to Google and just type in Tony P's P''S networking events, you'll be able to find our website, be able to find our Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And if you got any question about events, whether you want to attend, you want to sponsor, or even if you want to speak, because a lot of our events, we have fireside chats, we have panel discussions, we have keynote speakers, because it's not just about hanging out networking. I want to make sure people are educated too. So the event we're doing next week, we're going to have 4, superstar, people in the real estate world in Chicago talking about how to recession-proof your business in 2023. So it's going to be networking, but we're also going to have a nice fireside chat in the middle there too. Or panel discussion. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, Tony, I'm glad that you were here this morning. I appreciate you. I know that my listeners this morning that have been on have some great things to say as well. So, hey, I'm going to move you to the back room. I'm going to say goodbye. If you hang out with me for a minute backstage, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Mike. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I can't wait to hang out with you again very soon.
Yeah, you bet, Tony. Hang on.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, everybody, that was Thursday Morning Live, and that was Tony P. And I just want to say, if you have not been to one of Tony's events, you really need to go to his website right now and see what next event is coming up and how that works into your calendar, because they're great events. You get an opportunity to meet a bunch of people. You get to learn something. You get to grow. He's got that real estate event coming up this month where he's going to have some great speakers and talking about real estate and how they progressed, and you're going to get a lot from that. Hey, I want to thank you for being here this morning. Remember, we're here every Thursday, Saturday, Multifamily Unplugged, where we just focus in on the multifamily space. So we'll be live on Saturday. Make sure you tell somebody, okay? And please like us, love us on social media, subscribe to us on YouTube. For those of you listening in on YouTube this morning, I will look forward to seeing you next week.